Are we ready?
Mhm.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wine with Wita, a very special edition with the gorgeous Lorena. Good morning, Lorena. How are you today?
Yeah, good morning, Rita, and nice to be here. And congratulations on your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for being a guest. It was so lovely meeting you a few months ago at your book launch
Yeah,
at Help Zak to Speak, which
thank
was
you.
it was like the universe speaking to us that we had to connect in some way.
Exactly. And like it feels like yesterday actually, and like time flies, and here we are.
Exactly right. So a
Yeah.
few months ago, your Help Zak Speak was approached to me by a friend, and
Yeah.
I found it really interesting that someone in Australia had written a book in regards to the autistic child, but
Mm.
also strategies that you implement with your child. And it's interesting, I was reading it to my daughters not long after,
Uh-huh.
and everything in this book is classic to what we teach in speech pathology.
Oh, yes.
from
Exactly
the from
right.
the from the concept of following your child's lead, playing alongside your
Yeah.
child, simplifying your language, imitating
Yeah.
your child. And I just thought it was so, you delivered it in a way that's so easy to apply,
Mm.
but also for young families where sometimes a sibling doesn't understand what's going on with their
Yes.
other sibling. And it's nice for them to comprehend it from a literacy perspective.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And that's really like the whole catalyst of the book. It's really with the thought about other people learning to understand a kid with autism or autistic
Yeah,
kids. Yeah.
autistic child. So I guess talk to me through firstly your family and the journey you went on with your son's diagnosis, and what did you notice that raised some red flags for
Mm.
you?
Yeah, so a little bit of backstory. We spent a lot of our family life and my professional life in Singapore before moving to Australia. I have my daughter in 2014 and I had my son in 2019 in Australia, but we moved here in 2020 at the height of COVID. And for various reasons, it's more we got the permanent residency and we really wanted to settle in a more permanent life. So Australia is the best place for the kids. And I worked full time from there on. I really jumped into work at the height of COVID. Probably I got bored or something. And then we brought him to daycare 5 days a week. My daughter was settling as a year one student. And then, as in a normal daycare situation, they will provide a developmental report when he reached the age of 2. And they reported something about his behaviors in terms of he's not meeting some milestones. And at the time it was so confusing, Rita, because he is advanced at some ways and really pretty behind in more ways, actually, like socially. He has limited interest. His interest really revolves around numbers and letters. He can
Mm.
read sight words, three-letter words, two-digit numbers. So amazing to see. And
How
we thought actually he's genius.
how old was he at this point?
18 months.
Oh
And so,
wow!
yeah, they're kind of like, oh, wow, it's genius. It's so refreshing to see. And then for us to see the report from daycare alarming us that he's not interested in other kids.
Mm.
He's not pointing. He has limited verbal eye contact, and he has limited interest. He's not interested in typical toys. So it's not like a typical development, if you will.
Mm.
And so we
Mm.
thought at first, obviously, it's when you see the report, it's heart wrenching, and you kind of like think, oh my god, like this is really heartbreaking to read. But we have to be open minded when we read that. We have to look into that and not dismiss. So
Mm.
we had a meeting with the daycare center. They recommended us to see a GP, and the journey starts from there on. And the GP could not conclude either if he was autistic at the time. Obviously, he has delay,
Mm.
so we've been referred to a pediatrician. The pediatrician also could not ruled out if he's has autism, but he was diagnosed with global developmental delay.
Yeah.
And that gave us opportunity for funding for NDIS and therapy sessions, early interventions. And from there on, that was in 2021. It took us one more year to get the formal diagnosis because we have been referred to a Parramatta early, the PCAT assessment,
PCAT.
early,
Yeah, I love
yeah, like the
PCAT.
team. Yeah, so it's a team with clinicians, psychologists, pediatrician, development and developmental doctor to look after him, see where he's at, and we got the formal diagnosis. In that one year of journey, though we know that he's leading there, at least like you kind of like get ready to that kind of diagnosis. When you read it, it's just a formality to say, yeah, it's confirmed. It gives you a sense of relief in a sense,
Right.
because like that one year kind of like he's not he probably is not, he's probably ADHD, he's probably just just delayed. And then when you get the
Mm,
diagnosis, it's different, because from now on you get the support that you need, you get that kind of conclusion of the whole kind of like thinking for the last year or so. And uh, we whether we're sad, I think probably the sadness was at the early stages of that, as opposed to the report probably gave us, okay, finally, yes, it's sad to see that, but we get the it's more kind of like, what do we do from there on, and how do we
mm.
accept, and how do we navigate this journey, because it's a life's journey from that start on. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you got your diagnosis of a global developmental delay
Yeah.
after you saw the pediatrician, and then it was about a
Mm-hmm.
year till you got the formal autism
Yes.
diagnosis. Was
Yes.
was it around the was he diagnosed with level 1, 2? Like what level was
He
he?
was level three, needing for
Level 3.
maximum support,
Yeah.
because he's not there in terms of um, like the typical 2 year old or 3 year old, if you will.
Mm,
He
mm,
doesn't follow instruction. He's very, very self-willed. A lot of hand leading. Doesn't use functional words. He has some words, but not functional.
mm, mm.
His interest is very limited. He has different way of interest than normal kids.
Mm.
um, it regressed actually from 2 to 3. Two, you can
Okay.
kind of like confused in a way that he's just quirky. And then on three, a 3 year old, you can kind of like see, yeah, he's different. When you
Yeah, you
compare
can
him
see.
to a 3 year old, yeah, he is different. So, and then we accepted him as he is. He's a happy boy anyway. His emotions are kind of like a happy or really upset. The in
Mm,
between probably is just something that he's in between, just kind of like looking around, but more often is more happy and upset because he needs something, and out of
yeah.
frustration he needs to communicate but could not communicate. And so there's that in between. Now he's much better. He knows how to regulate himself, knows how to, if he could not get what he wants, he will just divert things to different things, and he can soothe himself. And so
Mm.
through time he learned how to soothe himself on whatever ways that he can do and divert himself to something else.
Oh wow, you've learned so much. I love hearing how you're explaining it because it's such a journey, as you mentioned.
Yes, it
And you
is.
spoke about accessing services. So after the GDD diagnosis, did you start speech there straight away or OT?
So even so speech first, and
Mhm.
that's actually one thing that I wanted to share, to
Mm,
be open with all of these kind of signals or early signs, because the access to all of this therapy availability is really hard. It took us three
yeah.
months to get speech therapy sessions. We
Mm,
got the kind of recommendation in October. We only got the speech therapy availability in December. OT only in June. Behavioral
wow.
therapy after a year. So it took a while to get that access. A lot of wait list, and
Mm,
so it's not easy. So I think these kinds of early signals that you can see from your child, I think needs not to be dismissed. You need to have it an open mind, because it may not be autism for all we know. It's just delay, which needs to be like addressed by a speech therapist, which I've like heard from my other friends, like they're not really autism. It's just speech delays in general. Um, and then I guess, but there's leaps and bounds in terms of how they were from a language delay into someone who can talk
something.
straightly. And so, so with my son, it's a different development. It will be not a typical kind of like milestone for him. It will be a
Mm.
journey where he gets language here, he gets functional at some point, not functional again, use it if he's forced to use it. Their brain is amazing, Rita, I have to
It
say.
is. It's
It's
very
just
gorgeous.
something that, yeah, like, and I guess this is actually something that young kids need to understand, that their peers thinks differently.
Mm.
So, and that's the reason why I write this book. Really, is really to share it with kids, so there's no stigma at that age. They'll just have to accept other kids are different.
Yes, absolutely. You mentioned something about the signs. When you said be open with the signs, did you
Mm,
mean try not to feel as if your child demonstrating limited eye contact, or your child not
mm.
using language as just their way, or be receptive to the feedback and know how you can support your child in another way?
Yeah, be receptive on the
Mhm.
feedback. That really helps us. Obviously, acknowledge that you will be in denial at first,
Mhm.
but I'd say receptive with the feedback, because that's where you can kind of like open yourselves to support that you need for your child. At the end of the day, it's always with good intent, nothing to do
Mm.
with like dismissing the child for who they are. And it's not a competition, it's really for good intent. The child is developed, we need to help the child navigate, and also the parents navigate, because it can be confusing, it can be really something that you can dismiss it and just go with the flow, or accept it, be receptive, so you'll get the support that you need from there on. Which I think
Mm.
for me, and my husband have taken it with an open mind. And good thing is we're in Australia, where it's really accepted, and the
Mm.
support is open. Obviously, there's still some work to be done in terms of how we can, short, like the wait for shortlist can be better. But
Yeah.
I think it's the fact that we have been receptive from day one. We get the support that we need.
Yeah, I
Mm.
love hearing how open-minded you are and welcoming to any feedback,
Mm.
especially when you're hearing news that your child is different, and
Yes,
hearing news that you need to change things that you normally do at home to support your child. And for many parents, they find that really hard to do.
it
Um,
is.
you mentioned the word not being in denial. Did you ever get a sense of, no, this isn't the case, my child is okay? How did you go through the waves, I would say, even of grief, like coming to terms with this new world of yours?
Mm. It's a roller coaster of emotion. I have to say, a
Mm.
2-year-old is a roller coaster of emotion. I have to look into developmental chart. I have to take where is that, and kind of like, oh, okay, maybe 50% he got there, 50% not, and
Mm.
maybe he can keep up with the other 50 a year or so. 2-year-old is really confusing. The moment you reach
Mm.
3, the moment I see him in 3 and compare with other kids who talks really straight, and I kind of like compare with my other kid too, and I have to kind of like slowly accept to say he's different. I can see he's
Mm.
different, and I
Mm.
have to accept the fact that it's different. I have to accept where he's at, and so it's a roller coaster of emotion. You go through like denial, kind of like sadness and grief, because you would expect like, oh, life different from how you expect
Mm.
it to be. You expect like a child will be flourished and thriving, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, like they're kind of like not really belonging to a typical world, and you have to kind of like, and he needs a lot of support. So it's really something that I have to have an open mind to be able to accept things where they are.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
definitely. And yeah, I love how you use that roller coaster analogy, because as you're achieving one certain goal,
Mm.
you're faced with then something that's going to put your child a little bit back because another difficulty comes up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
Like at 3, he got better in terms of how he copes. Again, there's another kind of like aggression that comes in. And you don't know
Uh,
what that aggression comes in, because maybe they're really feeling something that, like kind of like your brain probably is catching up, but you have the limitations in terms of speaking.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
kind of like disconnection is something that gets out of frustration. And because they could not talk, that becomes an aggression, like kind of like, like hitting or slapping or
Mm.
something. But that's it. Like you go through that, and then again you have to kind of like, this too shall pass, and true enough it shall
It
pass,
shall pass.
because like
Yeah.
it shall pass. And then he
Mm.
became better again in terms of how he behaves. He get happy again, and probably at the time he was feeling something that we don't know because obviously he couldn't speak.
Can't
And
verbalize.
that becomes kind of like that aggression. When I say aggression, it's more kind of like really that like he's frustrated, and so he needs like that help. And so you have to understand
Mm.
that, like you have to kind of like think this is not personal, this is something a child needing support.
Mm.
So
And I guess you've touched based on the concept of your child's behaviour is their form of communication. They're getting
yes.
frustrated is because they cannot verbally express or show you.
Mm.
So let's
Mm-hmm.
appreciate that this isn't them in a difficult way, but more this is their way of communicating that something is bothering
It's
them. They're
wrong.
frustrated,
Yes.
and I feel
Yes.
like once parents remove the behaviour to
Mm.
the lack of they remove the behavior associated with their child, but actually gain a better understanding of, oh, this is their communication. It actually supports their way of further supporting their child to communicate.
Mm.
Yeah,
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 for any misbehavior, there's always cause to it. So I always
yeah.
believe that whatever that behavior, be it a typical or neurodivergent child, whatever the behavior that they have, there's always a cause to it. So rather than focusing on that behavior, focus on the cause,
Mm,
because you probably will address that cause more often than dismissing that behavior because, like, it's not a typical way that like a child should. Let them be a child because
yeah.
they're having frustrations, the big emotions for them to go through.
Mm, mm. And I'm actually loving hearing your story because it's like you're coming to terms and a realization, which I believe was probably the pure reason why Help Zak was made,
Yes.
to really
Yes.
read, to raise awareness about autism, but also
Mm.
understanding it's a journey. But I also loved what you mentioned, reducing social stigma. And how we
Yes.
reduce social stigma is through education. And how do we teach our young children? Through their own lens, which is literacy, reading.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so talk
Yeah.
to me about this gorgeous book, which I love.
Yeah.
And what was your, obviously your son was your inspiration, but what was also your inspiring point to put this out there into the world?
Yeah. So this book was inspired by a one Friday dinner with my husband, and he said, you can write a book, and he said, really, like, and he was the catalyst of all these ideas, like, do this and that, and I'm just the one who executes, and then, and he said, like, yeah, you're right, I can do it. Let me just kind of, and the next day, Rita, because we got that, you know,
Do it.
the next day, Rita, like when I was like going to meet a friend, I was in a bus, and I was just writing the script. That's it for an hour. I get a full story, and then and we just refined it along the way and contacted different suppliers to come into life. And you know what's why? And I guess like the whole idea was inspired by my kids, not just my autistic son, but my daughter as well.
Mm,
So the one therapy that resonated to me the most was the first speech therapy session. The speech therapist came to our house and had a session. My daughter was there, listening intently and attentive, very attentive, and trying to learn how it's being done. And then, and then the speech therapist was also kind of like showing my daughter how to do it, and she was just like listening in there, kind of like and trying to see whether how she can help the brother.
yeah,
And then I thought to myself, like this, whatever that like the speech therapists are doing or other therapists is like a play based, really connect. The
yeah,
connection is really
yeah.
something that's key to it. And so my daughter was trying to kind of like apply it, like from the next day or so, and even like kind of like her ways of dealing with the brother, because she's been longing to have a playmate to
Mm,
for her little brother to talk to her. And so that's kind of like to me, oh, like these simple things can be put in a book and can be teach to other kids and families. It's so simple to follow. It just needs to be like a ways of how to deal with a child, like with the delays or the autism. And so we put it all into a book, and more kind of
mm,
like easy to follow, because I guess yes, you'll get a lot of books out there. We're really very meaningful in terms of how it's being done. But I thought actually if you inculcate these learnings to a young kid, they get to accept it more and no stigma with it, because it's becoming kind of like at that young age, my daughter has not worried about his brother, how he's going to grow up. She's just thinking about the little brother as someone who's different, he'll have his own ways of how to navigate the world. And so the book is kind of like opening her eyes in terms of how I can really kind of like teach my brother how to do things. And even like when she grows up, she wanted to be a speech therapist actually,
Yes,
because like
sounds like she
she
will
just
be.
wanted to help the little brother. And I said to
Mm.
myself, like, this learnings from the way I see my kids is something that I can also share through this book. And so this book is really targeting more on the sibling and also the family and how they can help them, their other little brother or sister, to learn how to speak or really connect with them through play and all other that you can see in the book.
Yeah, I love the
Yeah,
book. I love the book because even though the concept of learning how to speak, it's about connection and communicate.
connection.
Yeah, and
Yes,
communicate.
correct.
And you mentioned that your son would hand lead and would point, right? And
Yes,
that's his way of communicating with you. And I guess what you've done there is reduce the idea of communication doesn't have to be verbal. Communication
correct.
can also be non-verbal. And if we start to
Yeah.
see children through the lens of how they can communicate best,
Mm.
we can really
Mm.
support them and thrive their communication skills in more ways that you never knew in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, and all communication is valid, and like that's the
Mm,
thing. It's about the connection because my son would do a lot of hand leading. Say, for example, he wants something in the pantry, he will do this and do that. They're gonna
yeah, point
see.
out.
Point
Yeah.
out, or kind of like he wants something in the fridge, bring me to the fridge, and then go to the fridge, and then open the fridge, and then okay, or he will lead my daughter to play it in outside,
Oh, that's so
hand lead,
sweet.
and then
Mm.
because like he loves someone jumping, it's kind of like a
Yeah,
visual
you have that in
sensory
the
for
book.
him,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and he wants my daughter to jump in the trampoline, and he was just kind of like cheer, like laughing with her. um, he wants to lead me to swing, and like he just kind of like, okay, let's swing, and that's kind of
Mm,
like his ways of communicating. We tried, he will, there will be ways where he used functional language if he's forced to do. For example, he used the word open at some point,
mm,
but then again he will not use it again. So it's
mm,
something that we try to build and be consistent about it. So we'll try to kind of like use it more functional because probably his brain is used to hand leading. The
mm,
verbal language is something that has not been tapped into to use functionally, which like
mm.
it's a
It's a
journey.
journey.
He'll use it at some point. He will say angry if he's like upset or something. He will say happy if he's happy.
Yeah,
But those are kind of like bursts with an emotion to say, and just out of random. But
yeah,
at least like we're slowly getting there in terms of that connection of what is happy, what is angry, what is upset, and what is sad or something. So
yeah.
yeah, like it's a journey. So we're getting there, but at least like uh, I was actually telling to myself that if this book is being kind of like used in schools and be known, it will be a much better kind of like, it will open the kids' eyes to say that, oh yeah, like there are other kids that's different, and there are other kids like why they're behaving that way. It's because of these, and because their brain develops in different ways where functional language is not natural for them. It's not something
Mm,
that just, for a typical kid, you will say you have one word here, it will just slowly build up. For them, you have
mm.
one word here, another two words there, maybe one regressed again. So it's just something that needs to be, for people needs to be aware. So there's no stigma in terms of other kids who are delayed in that sense.
Yeah, I really agree with you. I feel like the schooling system or daycare system really should encourage this kind of book, not to only, well, not only from like a child with autism perspective, but
Yeah.
also for children with social difficulties or children
Yes.
that have trouble communicating because they're worried how their friends might perceive them. But
Yes.
the book really resonates with really tapping into someone's interest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And when you
Correct.
follow someone's interest, you follow their lead and then you gain that connection. So what I loved about this book, you don't have to be on the spectrum or have a
Correct.
disability to know how to communicate to someone. So it was
Yeah.
also like a nice touching guide for children to know, okay, he's playing with the bubbles. To make friends with him, I want to play with
We'll
bubbles
play with the
too.
bubbles.
Yeah, I want to
Correct.
go. And
Yeah.
that's how my relationship is built with him. You know what came to
Yeah.
my mind, Lorena, now? Book Week's coming up with
Oh
children.
yeah.
What a
Yes.
gorgeous way, because my daughters read this to themselves all the time. What a gorgeous way to dress up as either the daughter or your
Oh, that's
son and
true.
then promote it. You should
Oh,
promote
that
that on your
gave me an
page.
idea.
Yeah, you should have like a book
Yeah.
week theme. How can you promote the book?
Yeah.
Book week's all about literacy and awareness, right? So
That's true.
I'm going to do that for you. I might even wear
Oh,
the badge you made me
oh, thank you
in
so
Book
much,
Week.
Rita. Thank you. Yeah, that gave me an idea. My daughter had a book swap last week. And
Yeah,
so mom can bring one of the books and they'll swap it with someone. Yeah, just bring one and then like, someone will benefit out of the book. And then, yeah, but the book week is coming up in June, July, August, I think. So
happening
yeah,
soon.
that's a
I
good
have to
idea.
think of an outfit. It's the most stressful
Oh,
part of my
yes.
schooling life.
This is actually an easy
I don't
yellow.
like making outfits because they just get very too overwhelming for me.
Oh, yeah, I know,
Too
I
much,
know.
too much. But
Yeah.
okay, so we've discussed the impact of the book. Have you
Mm.
what you mentioned about your journey? There are many people that are listening here going through the initial diagnosis of their child, or even on a
Mm.
similar journey with you, and possibly will buy this book for somebody.
Okay.
Um, what tips would you give parents going through this, particularly if they're in that denial phase or kind of hoping that it might not be, or
Mm.
or just second guessing what a pediatrician may have told them?
Um, so I would say to have an open mind and be receptive to those feedback,
Mm,
and go through and assess where a child at actually. So
mm,
obviously the denial is a natural emotion to think and feel at first. But I would say the lesson that I learned from this journey is the fact that we have been receptive and we've been open minded to accept our son's diagnosis leads us to the support that we need. And
mm,
so I guess the worst thing that you can do is deny it, and then you will see the signs kind of like open up at some point, and you're already delayed, and you get the delay in the support because of the wait list that's coming in. So I'd say start early, and it may not be autism, it may just be a delay, but at least having that kind of open-minded while you're taking like the signs that your children's diagnosis will give you the support that you need. Actually,
yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
absolutely. And I guess that's where I come in, and we stress about the importance of early intervention. And the earlier we
Yeah,
start, the better it is for your child, and the better the outcomes for your child too.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one thing is, I guess the denial comes with the stigma.
Mm,
As adults have that stigma that autistic is something negative. And then when you realize it's not, you have a child who's happy, who's thriving in their own wee world. It's just us kind of like looking at it in a different perspective because it's not typical. But then again, you think about like your meet your child where they're at, and love them as they are. Like we probably kind of like adults have this stigma of like what a person should be. But then again, like people are different. So the early that you can kind of like accept that, the better you will be able to deal with your child, and also like the people around you.
yeah, Lorena, I
Yeah.
love this honesty. It's absolutely true. Like, I love them for who they are and watch them thrive in
Mm.
their own way.
Yeah.
I really, really love that. Thank you for being so honest and open with this. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you.
Uh, I wanted to ask, what's the feedback from the book? Have you had lots of parents come back and speak quite highly of it, and it's helped their family out with their process too?
Yeah, like one of the there are two feedback that I really kind of like, I find it really heartwarming. Was the first one, she's in California, I think, and it's the same kind of like setup. Like she has a daughter who has a neurotypical and an autistic brother, and then like the child is 5 year old saw the book and really was happy reading it and trying to kind of like share the same learning to the father. And so it's really heartwarming to see those kind of feedback, to that a 5 year old kid can read the book and really be happy learning how to deal with their autistic brother. The other one was someone who is he's an she's an NDIS educator rather. And then like when they read the book, because they've been like dealing with families having the same journey, she was really like have kind of like cried and tears in her eyes when reading the book, because she can kind of like feel how it's being put into. And like I think another one was really it's just a good one actually from Life with Courtney, and she said like this book was someone has write this book in their own kind of like they've been into that, so it's really kind of like a real book to share. So it's really someone who can resonate actually, especially those families with the same journey as mine.
Something just came to my mind. You know, when you get NDIS and you're given all this information with all the services that you have to access, this
Yeah.
has to come with that package to understand.
I know.
You know, especially with waiting lists, Lorena.
The
Waiting
waiting
lists is
list,
humongous.
yes. Mm.
Waiting lists are so long, and it's so taxing on parents' emotions when they just don't know where to begin, and naturally they would
Yeah.
refer to Google or the internet. But what a lovely reference point to know, oh, okay, let me just get in their world, let me communicate with what they're interested in
Yeah.
as the first step. So yes, if anyone's
Yeah.
watching from listening from NDIS, buy a bulk and
Thank
put it
you.
with the
I
starter
know.
pack.
And again, really like the I know that like it's probably targeted to families, targeted to young kids. And I thought actually young kids really like those like the feedback of a 5-year old reading from it and trying to help. And this like the journey of my daughter is something that like it's easy to follow. It's just, like a lot of like tips in here. I put it in a very cartoony kind of like a book. And so it's really removing that stigma from that young age on. And so us adults can learn from those kids, because my daughter doesn't have any stigma at all, will just accept her little brother as they are. So
Mm,
that kind of like, if you start young, that stigma probably is, yeah, they're just different. Us
mm.
adults have already that kind of bad connotation of
Foundation.
what
Yeah.
autism is. And
Mm,
so that probably is some of the causes of those feeling of denial, because you don't want. Obviously, it still needs to be acknowledged you're in denial because you want your kid to have like a typical kind of like milestone and journey. But then again, we have to accept the fact that kids are not all kids are the same. Yeah.
no, and I love, again, like I'm loving this conversation where let's reduce stigma at an early age to
Yeah.
reduce the likelihood of a parent going through a bigger wave of emotions when, if they were ever to encounter a diagnosis of their child, but because they have that preconception or feeling that
A
it's
feeling of
okay for your child to
mm,
be different. And what I've just learned from there, children teach us as adults all the time,
yes,
because they're
yeah.
so innocent and they're so pure with their foresight
Mm,
that they have no stigma attached, because we accept everyone for who they are and for what
yes.
they bring to the table, which is such an important message we as adults need to always reflect on.
Learn.
Learn
Yeah.
from our children, because our children, um, they're just so pure and they're
They're just
innocent with their
pure.
mindset. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Lorena, I've absolutely loved this chat, and I'm so
Thank
looking forward to
you.
your second book. What's that about?
Yes. So we're thinking about different concepts. So it's something that I'm working with my daughter actually.
Yeah,
It's
I love
supposed to be a secret, but she wants to be
it.
part of
Okay,
the
we won't
book.
discuss it.
It's okay. So it's something that like she's already done her part. So it's my part now. Like I'm still kind of like looking for that. That 1 hour ride in the bus where I've got that kind of momentum going. Like I can
Yeah,
like do it at one go. I still need that. I'm dragging myself as well. So maybe now I have another kind of like reason to do it. So
yeah, absolutely. Like I love the book, and as a speech pathologist, I've said
mm,
I advocate this book. It's the best book for every family, not even with just for any family unit, because it sends messages of how to connect with any individual. You don't have to have a disability or be autistic, which
yeah.
I love. Um, I would love to promote your second book. I'm more than happy to
Oh,
share it
thank
once it's ready.
you.
But I manifest the story that you want, and I'm sure it'll be
Yeah.
delivered to you tenfold, because
Yeah.
your messages and the support you are putting out there in our community, especially for families going through this, is unmeasurable. So thank you for what you are doing for children on the spectrum, or autistic children, because it's pure and it's gorgeous. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the kind words, Rita, and thank you for reaching out to me the moment you saw the message. Like, oh yes, she's so kind, and the invitation
Oh,
just come in. Like, really, thank you,
we were
and
meant
thank
we
you
were
for
meant
your
to
platform. Yeah.
we were meant to connect at a gorgeous at a meaningful point of this, your son.
Yeah.
So as you know, on my podcast, I have at the end of the day, what's the word of your day to make you a better version of yourself? As I said earlier, my word of the day is open communication. My daughter and I had a bit of a tiff this morning, which
This
fizzled
was-
into a manic morning, and it made me, on my way to work, I was reflecting, how can I change my morning, or how can I change my day? And really, it's communication with your ones that you love openly.
yeah.
So I
Yeah.
say to you, what word would you love to put out there for the listeners?
Yeah. So mine is breathe.
Mm.
Yeah. You know, Rita, like life can be overwhelming at times, not just my journey with my autistic son, life in general. So sometimes we forget to breathe and
Mm.
be and reflect back and think about what have I done? Like I just need to have
Mm.
a clear mind and clear mind and think about what has happened, and probably breathe is something that you can kind of like have a step back and reset and do it again. So I
Mm.
think in a day we have to always think about have a breather, step back, and go back. It's a cycle. It's an
Mm.
emotional cycle. Life is
Mm.
not perfect, and we just have to breathe.
Yeah. And I think for any parent listening to this, maybe for me too, just breathe.
Breathe.
Breathe. It's
Yeah,
going to be okay. And you
it's
said
going
something
to be
earlier which is
okay.
beautiful. This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. It's going
Yeah.
to be okay.
Yeah.
It's a journey. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lorena, for your morning and your time this morning. It was an honor talking to you, and I cannot wait to spread the good word about Help Zak Speak and the new book that will be released really
Oh,
soon.
thank
You have a
you.
gorgeous afternoon, and I'll speak soon.
You too. Thank you, Rita.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye bye.